Hello, and welcome to the Managing Android Devices in Education video series. This is Module 3, Management Options for Corporate-Owned Devices. In the previous module, we discussed management options for personal Android devices. So let's now transition to the management options for corporate or school-owned devices. Android Enterprise fully managed user devices are designed for productivity. With this option, devices are enrolled into Mobile Device Management or MDM during the initial device setup experience. It provides school administrators with full management control over the device to configure settings, deploy applications, including the ability to remote wipe all company data in the event the device is lost or stolen. All data on the device is considered corporate, so there's no separation between personal and organizational data. As with any of the Android Enterprise corporate-owned enrollment options, a device reset is required to onboard devices during the initial device setup experience. Meet Alison Ochoa. She's a high school student at the I4U school, and she has been issued a brand new school device this year. She unboxes her device and walks through the initial device setup experience, logs in with her school account, and immediately sees applications that she frequently uses, such as Word and PowerPoint, coming down to her device. Allison is super excited to finally have her own school device to help her getting all of her homework done. There are several useful customization options available for Android Enterprise fully managed user devices. The Microsoft Launcher, which is an Android application, allows enterprise IT administrators to customize managed device home screens by deploying custom wallpapers or even enabling the dock experience, for example. This standardizes the look and feel of all managed Android devices across different OEMs, system versions, while providing a consistent experience for end users. Fully managed user devices can be configured with a more lockdown experience where users can only install school-approved Google Store apps, which is quite common in K through 12, or it can also be a more open experience by allowing users full access to the Google Play Store for free apps without requiring the use of personal accounts to install them. This is quite common in the higher education space. Let's take a closer look at Angelina's experience setting up her device for the very first time using the Android Enterprise fully managed user devices enrollment flow. In this demo, we'll leverage the QR code enrollment method available for corporate-owned devices, but admins can leverage a persistent enrollment option using Zero Touch or Knox Mobile Enrollment for qualifying devices to ensure that devices get enrolled into mobile device management. Angelina takes her device out of the box and begins setting up her device for the very first time. She scans the QR code, configures her Wi-Fi, identifies that her device belongs to an organization, and proceeds to configuring her device. She's notified that her device is not private since all data in this device will be considered corporate. She accepts the Google Services terms and conditions. And starts the enrollment portion of the process. She's asked to enter her work or school account to begin the process and starts the very first step of installing work apps, which includes Microsoft Authenticator, Microsoft Intune, and the Intune Company Portal for mobile application management scenarios. With the first step now complete, she logs into the Microsoft Intune app to complete the remaining steps for enrolling the device into mobile device management. She registers the device and is asked to provide a category for this specific device, and she chooses high school devices as the category. The enrollment process is now complete. She receives the common experience that she gets with the Microsoft Launcher. She immediately sees all of the applications that are being targeted to her device. And as you can see, you can launch the Google Play apps to also self-service applications that have been tailored by your school or organization. Angelina is now ready to begin using her device. Android Enterprise Dedicated Devices is the most restrictive of the corporate-owned enrollment options. It is intended for single-purpose scenarios where devices are locked down into a single application or a limited set of applications in a kiosk configuration. It is not intended for scenarios where users need to sign in into applications with their own separate identities. Similar to the Android Enterprise fully managed user device scenarios, a device reset is required to onboard devices during the initial device setup experience. This enrollment method offers a guided admin enrollment experience. It is ideal for shared classroom devices or special school programs such as reading literacy, where devices are configured in a highly locked down single app or multi-app kiosk mode. It provides school administrators with the full management control over the device to configure settings, deploy apps, including the ability to remotely wipe all company data so devices can be easily repurposed to different grades or even be moved into a different specialized school program. There are two different configurations for Android Enterprise dedicated devices: single app and multi-app kiosk modes. For single app kiosk mode, you simply need to select the manage Google Play app that you intend to use, and devices will start up on that specific application. For multi-app kiosk mode, you must target the manage home screen app to all the devices that you plan to use this configuration. And you also must target any app that's going to be part of the multi-app kiosk mode to the same set of devices. To target applications to devices enrolled with Android Enterprise dedicated devices, you can simply leverage the enrollment profile name when creating Azure AD dynamic groups. There are several customization options available for Android Enterprise dedicated devices. The Manage Home Screen is an Android application used for corporate-owned dedicated devices, which acts as a launcher for apps deployed in single app or multi-app kiosk configuration to run on top of it. The Manage Home Screen provides IT admins the ability to customize the overall device experience and to restrict the capabilities that the end users can access. A few of the common customizations include custom wallpaper and app layout for consistent end user experience when using different shared devices, floating home screen button for a quick way to get back to the home screen, and the ability to allow admins to exit kiosk mode, which is very helpful for troubleshooting scenarios. The most common customizations are included as part of the device restriction policy in Intune, but additional customizations can be done using the application configuration policy. Let's take a look at the enrollment experience for Android Enterprise dedicated devices. In this demo, we'll leverage the QR code enrollment method available for corporate-owned devices, but admins can also leverage a persistent enrollment option such as Zero Touch or Knox Mobile Enrollment for qualifying devices to ensure the devices get enrolled into mobile device management. The admin at the iFree school has taken the device out of the box, and it's now ready to start the enrollment process. He scans the QR code, configures the Wi-Fi, confirms the device belongs to the organization, and begins the enrollment process. You'll notice that this enrollment process does not require a work or school account to be used for the enrollment process to complete. He accepts the Google Services terms and conditions, and will reach the final stage of configuration for this device. The device is now configured. He now has to approve permissions for the Manage Home Screen to be able to overlay applications. And applications are now going to start to flow down in the same configuration that was defined by the IT Pro. One additional option that you have that's quite useful for administrators: by pressing the back button multiple times, you reach this menu where you can collect logs, you can launch the Android app for troubleshooting purposes, and you can also launch the Microsoft Intune app, for example, for seeking the device policies from Intune. And finally, you can exit Kiosk Mode, which can be quite helpful for administrators to gain full access over the device and troubleshoot issues. And when they need to go back into a full Kiosk Mode, all they have to do is launch the managed home screen app again. And that's it. The device is now ready for the classroom. We have seen the enrollment experience for both Android Enterprise fully managed and dedicated device scenarios. We'll now take a look at the configuration steps for enabling these management experiences for corporate-owned devices. In this walkthrough, we'll cover how to create a device restriction policy for dedicated devices, how to create a device restriction policy for fully managed devices, and finally, how to deploy managed Google Play apps to corporate-owned devices. We're going to start the configuration process by going to the Microsoft Endpoint Manager Admin Center portal. And before we begin with any configuration, we're going to go ahead and focus on creating the dynamic groups for both dedicated devices and fully managed devices that we can use for targeting the device restriction policies we're going to create, as well as for targeting of the managed Google Play apps. So to get started, we're going to go to Groups. We're going to create new groups. The first group is going to be the dedicated devices group. So we'll give it a name. Membership type, we're going to select dynamic device. And we're going to add a dynamic query. And for dedicated devices, as we talked about earlier, for property, we're going to use enrollment profile name. Operator, we're going to use equals. And for value, we're going to use dedicated devices. We'll select Save and Create. Now we're ready to start the second group, which is the fully managed devices. So we select New Groups. Once again, we're going to be choosing dynamic device. We're going to add a dynamic query. But for the fully managed devices, we're going to use the categories that are selected during the enrollment process. So under property, we're going to choose device category. Operator, we're going to choose equals. High school devices. Okay, so we'll select Save again and Create. So we've completed the creation of both groups that we're going to need. So now let's start the first step of creating a device restriction policy for dedicated devices. So for that, we're going to go back to Devices. We're going to select Android, Configuration Profiles. We're going to create a profile. And under Platform, we're going to choose Android Enterprise. Profile type, we're going to select under Fully Managed, Dedicated, and Corporate-Owned Work Profile. We're going to choose Device Restrictions. We're going to click Create. We'll move forward. There are several settings in here, but we'll primarily focus on the device experience part of this configuration. So under Device Experience, Enrollment Profile type, we can choose Dedicated Device, which is what we're trying to configure. And there are two options, as we talked about earlier. For a single app, you have the ability to simply select which app you would like to pick. We're going to go ahead and pick multi-app, so we can see the various options we have for multi-app as well. So for multi-app, you can actually pick a custom app layout, which is what we saw during our demonstration. So we'll click Enable, and we're going to leave the 4 columns and 5 rows, and we're going to pick some of the apps that we selected, for example, during our demo. Khan Academy. You can also pick another app like Kindle, and so on and so forth, based on your need to be able to populate the various apps on the device. We can also determine whether or not we're going to have folder icon, what kind of theme we're going to use for them. For example, we can use the dark theme. In our case, we didn't select a folder icon, so that's not going to necessarily be used with this specific configuration, but it can be helpful if you have, for example, several web links that you wanted to deploy for a certain category. We can also select the screen orientation to be landscape, for example, and the options that we talked about. By pressing the back button multiple times, we can enable the Leave Kiosk Mode and enter a PIN, for example, that can be used to exit the kiosk mode. And we can also set a background in here too for devices to have a custom wallpaper, for example here. And we'll go ahead and proceed with the settings that we have selected here and move to next. No need for scope tags. And for assignments, we're going to go add groups, and we're going to select the I for E dedicated devices that we just created. We'll click next. We're going to verify that the settings that we configured look correct, and they do. We'll select create. And we've now completed the creation of a device restriction policy for dedicated devices. We can now configure a device restriction policy for fully managed devices. For that, we're going to go back to Android. We'll click on Create Profile. And once again, for platform, we select Android Enterprise. Under Profile Type, we're going to select under Fully Managed, Dedicated, and Corporate-Owned Work Profile, the device restriction option. We'll select Create. We'll give this a name. Once again, there are several options that can be configured for fully managed devices, but we're going to focus on the device experience. Under enrollment profile type, this time we're going to choose fully managed, and very much like we saw during our demonstration, we can make the Microsoft launcher the default launcher on the device, and that's what we'll do. We can also configure custom wallpaper, and we can also determine if the dock presence is enabled or disabled. So we'll go ahead and show the dock presence, and we'll leave the allow users to change dock presence to not configure to maintain a standard look and feel for all the devices that are enrolled using this enrollment method. Now that all the settings are set, we can go ahead and move forward. There's no need to configure scope tags. And for targeting, we're going to add groups, and we're going to pick the group that we just created using the category of high school student devices. We'll move forward, confirm that all the settings that we've set look correct, which it does, and we'll click Create. That's it. That's all that's required to create a fully managed device restriction policy. For our final configuration, we're going to be creating and deploying a managed Google Play web link to both fully managed and dedicated devices. For that, we're going to go to Apps. We're going to click on Android, select Add, and under App Type, we'll select Manage Google Play App. And instead of deploying an app that already exists in the App Store, like PowerPoint and Excel, we're going to create a brand new one to be deployed in our environment. And it's a web link. So we're going to go to Web Apps. We're going to select on the right-hand corner the plus option. And for title, we're going to be deploying the Sway web link. And at the URL, we're just simply going to put in the URL for Sway. And we can actually define some display options for this web link when the user launches it, either to go full screen, standalone, or minimal UI. For this, we're going to select the full screen option. And for icon, we can actually select a custom icon for this application. And this is one of the main differences between deploying a standard web link in Intune versus a managed Google Play web link, because the application will take on the icon of whatever is defined in this specific configuration. So we'll go ahead and select the icon for Sway. It looks good. All we have to do now is click Create, and the application should now be created and synced over to Intune so it can be deployed. There it is. So it's now created. We're going to go ahead and force a sync. And let's look for the Sway web link that we just configured. So here it is. We have the Sway Managed Google Play web link. We'll select that. And then the final step now is to deploy this to both of the device groups that we've recently created. So under Assignments, I'll click Edit. Under Required, I'll click Add Group. And I'm going to select the I for E Fully Managed first. And now the dedicated devices as well. Click Select. I'll click Review and Save. Confirm that the groups that I've selected got configured correctly, and just hit Save. And that's it. That's how it was required to be able to deploy a managed Google Play web link to my corporate-owned devices. This is the end of Module 3, Management Options for Corporate-Owned Devices. Here's a brief recap of what we covered. In the first module, we covered a high-level overview of Android device management, followed by management options for personal devices using app protection policies and mobile device management. In this last module, we covered management options for corporate-owned devices using Android Enterprise fully managed user devices, as well as dedicated device scenarios. Here are some additional resources that expand on the topics that we covered throughout this video series.